2019 trade deadline was pretty decent. We had some moves at the beginning, we had a lot of moves at the end. There was definitely a lull in there, but now that it's done and over, it's time to start talking about these trades a little more in depth. I've had some time to look over the trades, do a little bit of research, and now I can formulate an opinion, so I'm going to go ahead and give you my grade on how every single team did during the MLB trade deadline. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like on it. That's the best way to show your support. Subscribe if you're new and you enjoy the content. If you love baseball, this is the place to be. Make sure to hit that sub button. Remember to get in the comments section down below. Let me know what you would grade some of these teams. If you agree, disagree with me, I'd love to know what you have to say down in the comments below. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at GiraffeNeckMark. Links in the description. I'm going to be posting a lot of stuff over there this weekend, going to Pittsburgh to see the Mets-Pirates series. And if you guys ever want to buy some tickets to sports games or anything in general, make sure to head on over to SeatGeek and use the code Giraffe to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Now it's time to start handing out the grades. And we're going to start it off today with the Boston Red Sox, who get an F. Now at the trade deadline, they didn't make a lot of moves. They got Andrew Cashner. That was the only player they brought in, and that's why they didn't bring in enough. The Red Sox are currently competing for a wild card spot. They're still technically in the hunt for the American League East, but they're on the outside looking in right now, and they need a lot of help. The starting pitching hasn't been too strong. At least they addressed that a little bit with Andrew Cashner, but that bullpen is a mess. They don't have a closer. They really don't have a lot of quality arms out there, and they didn't get any. To just not do anything really significant at the trade deadline is a huge F for me, and I think Red Sox fans would agree. Not a good deadline. Next up, we have the Baltimore Orioles, who really didn't make a lot of noise in this deadline. This year, Andrew Cashner was the only player to leave the team, and they got back two prospects in Elio Prado and Noel Bertha Romero. Orioles are going to get a C for me. Not bad, not good. They could have done, I think, a little bit more. They could have sold off Michael Givens, maybe some other players, but to their defense, they didn't have to because none of these guys' contracts are expiring. So I don't think that the Orioles really improved at all this trade deadline, but I don't think they got worse either or really missed out on any opportunities, which is why they get a C. The Oakland A's went out and made some moves. They got started early by grabbing Homer Bailey. They also then got Jake Diekman, and then they also went out yesterday and got Tanner Roark from the Cincinnati Reds to help that starting rotation. I really like what the Oakland A's did this trade deadline. I'm going to go ahead and give them a B+. They didn't go out and grab any huge names, but that's not really how the Oakland A's roll, but I think the guys that they got can make a big difference. Jake Diekman's a really good left-handed pitcher out of the bullpen. He's got some nasty stuff. He strikes out a ton of batters, definitely adds more depth there. Homer Bailey's actually had a decent year. Now, he's no Cy Young Award winning pitcher. He's not an ace, but for the Oakland A's, they kind of make a living off these guys, and then grabbing Tanner Roark, who's a very solid pitcher, and his numbers are inflated because of where he played in Cincinnati. You move him to a much more pitcher-friendly ballpark in Oakland. I think it's a really good pickup. Kansas City Royals, they were going to be sellers, and that's pretty much what they did this deadline. They didn't make too many moves. They got Kevin Merrill, who's their number 18 prospect in their system. They also got Mike Montgomery, Ismael Aquino, and Dairon Blanco. So Merrill slots in their top 30. That's always a nice addition. The Royals really didn't give up too much. Overall, I'm going to give them a C. Again, nothing crazy, nothing bad. They probably could have gotten rid of a few more players, maybe try to get rid of Ian Kennedy, but overall, you can't really complain right now. The Chicago Cubs were a team that you expected to make big moves this deadline, and they sort of did. They went out and got Nick Castellanos, a big right-handed bat that can play the outfield and the corner infield positions. They addressed a second base slash utility man, a little bit of Ben Zobrist issue there by grabbing Tony Kemp. They got a couple arms in the bullpen with David Phelps and Derek Holland, and they also had another piece in Brad Weck. Overall, for the Chicago Cubs, I'm going to go ahead and give them a B rating. I really like the Nick Castellanos pickup. I think that was a really nice job by them. If you've seen my trade deadline videos, I've been talking about how Nick Castellanos is a JD Martinez type bat. The reason you don't see the home run numbers is because he played in Detroit, where it's an extremely pitcher-friendly park. Tony Kemp was a really nice pickup to fill that utility spot. He can play second base. He can play all over the place in the outfield. David Phelps, when healthy, is a really solid reliever. Derek Holland adds a little bit of length to that bullpen, gives you someone who can give you multiple innings, left-handed as well. The New York Yankees. Wow. Talk about a disappointing trade deadline. The Yankees acquired Terrence Gore earlier in the month, and they got Alfredo Garcia yesterday, a minor leaguer from the Rockies. Yeah, big old fat F for the New York Yankees. Starting pitching has been a huge issue for them this year. I say huge, they're still, what, like 30 games over 500? But when you see some of the other moves that teams made, the Yankees took a step back right now. That starting pitching is going to be an issue, and if you were going to have an issue with the starting pitching, at least get another arm in the bullpen to make it even more dominant. So for those reasons, I think the Yankees got to be an F. That's a bad job by Cashman, the Yankees front office. For the Los Angeles Dodgers, clearly the best team in the National League. They didn't have a lot of improvements to make to that roster. Dominant starting pitching, a great lineup. The bullpen was really only their issue, and even then, it's not something big. They went out and grabbed Tyler White from the Astros earlier in the month, and they added left-handed reliever Adam Kolarek and Jed Jerko. Jed Jerko is a bench bat. He's not going to fill in really anywhere else, and he's not going to be available until probably September due to an injury. Tyler White, same thing, bench player, can play first base, third base, maybe the corner outfield spots. He's a bit of a utility guy, so don't really expect too much out of Tyler White, although this is the Dodgers. They turn guys who are struggling into stars, Max Muncy, Justin Turner, Chris Taylor. And then Adam Kolarek is a nice little left-handed reliever they added to their bullpen. He's got an ERA under 4 this year, which isn't great, but he does have a low whip, and for a guy who you're probably using as a lefty specialist, I think it's a nice pickup. So I went out and gave the Dodgers a C+. The Houston Astros, the clear winners of the 2019 MLB trade deadline, easily the biggest move, the best move. Wow, the Astros. So in case you've been sleeping under a rock, the move that I'm talking about is the Astros getting Zack Greinke. Yes, Zack Greinke. They added Joe Biagini and Aaron Sanchez to help out that bullpen, which doesn't need a lot of help, by the way. They also got Martin Maldonado, and then they added minor leaguers Andre Scrub, Cal Stevenson, Rainer Rivas, and Raider Uceta. The guys that they got at the major league level are going to make big impacts for them. Astros won the deadline. They had a great job. A+ for me. I think you guys probably could have seen that already by the way I was talking about it. But getting Zack Greinke is huge. They are without a doubt the favorite in the American League right now. Who can compete with them? The San Francisco Giants, I called them liars. I said they can't be trusted. They're clearly making a push for the playoffs this year. They really weren't sellers. And I'll give them some credit. They made some good moves at the deadline. They traded away Drew Pomeranz and brought in Mauricio Dubon. Dubon is the number 8 prospect in their farm system now. They also added Jalen Davis, Prelander Baroa, Kaiwei Teng, and Tristan Beck, who's the number 18 prospect in their farm system. They got Dan Winther in the bullpen, and they added Scooter Gennett, who is a really good hitting second baseman. Now, the problem with the Scooter Gennett move is that he is a lefty, and typically lefties don't have the greatest time hitting for power in San Francisco. But overall, I do like the moves that the Giants made. I still think they should have been sellers. I think they should have got rid of Bumgarner, Will Smith, pretty much anybody. But if they're going for it, I think they did a decent job at making the team better. And the guys that they traded away, they actually got a pretty good return for. So I'm going to go ahead and give the Giants a B rating. Not a bad job. For the Philadelphia Phillies, a team competing for the National League East title, competing for a wild card spot, I'm not crazy about what they did at the deadline. They got Jose Perella from the Padres. They added Corey Dickerson, who I think is a nice pickup actually, should be a really good outfielder for them. And I called it, by the way. And then they added Jason Vargas from the New York Mets. Oh, wow, that one's a real head scratcher. Now, while Vargas has had a nice year thus far in 2019 for the Mets, he's a fly ball pitcher who doesn't strike out a lot of guys. He pitches to contact. Philadelphia Citizens Park is a bandbox, gives up a lot of home runs. Not a great mix there. They didn't give up a whole lot, let's be honest. They gave up some minor league catcher who doesn't hit. But if you're a Phillies fan, you can't be excited in the fact that the arm that you got at the deadline is Jason Vargas. So for the Phillies trade deadline, C+. They technically added a pitcher, which is something they need. They got an outfielder in Corey Dickerson, who I think is pretty solid, but I just don't know if it was the right pieces. So yeah, C+. The San Diego Padres were a team who during the deadline had a little bit of juice around them, possibly Noah Syndergaard coming. Maybe they make a push for Trevor Bauer. It ended up being pretty lackluster for them this year. They brought in Carl Edwards Jr. from the Chicago Cubs and Taylor Trammell from the Cincinnati Reds. Carl Edwards Jr. struggled in Chicago this year, changed up something with his pitch mechanics, hasn't really been the same pitcher. Taylor Trammell's a nice get back, but it's not really like the guy. So for the Padres, I have to give him a C. I thought it was a little bit of a lackluster deadline, especially with some of the rumors that they had going around them. The Marlins, we know they love to make trades. We've seen some of the trades they made in the past, but I gotta give them credit. The 2019 trade deadline, they did a really good job. From Minnesota, they got Lewin Diaz, who's the number 13 prospect in their system. They got Jesus Sanchez and Ryan Stanek from the Tampa Bay Rays, and Jesus Sanchez is actually a top prospect in baseball. He's number 42 in the top 100 in Major League Baseball, and he's number 3 in the Marlins system. And then they also got Jazz Chisholm from the Arizona Diamondbacks, a shortstop who's number 59 overall in the top 100 in Major League Baseball, and he's number 4 in the Marlins system. I personally really like what the Marlins did this deadline. They're helping replenish that farm system, building towards the future. So overall, I gotta give the Marlins an A. They're not making a push for this year. They're not making a push for next year, but they're getting some pieces that could be part of the future rebuild. And I think if you're a Marlins fan, you've gotta be pleasantly surprised. The Minnesota Twins, first place in the AL Central, but the Indians are hot on their tail. They need to go make some moves, specifically pitching side. Starting pitching and bullpen was their 2 biggest issues. They went out and got Sergio Romo from the Marlins, and they also added Sam Dyson along with a player to be named later and Chris Valamon. Romo and Dyson definitely addressed some of the bullpen issues. Romo's a veteran. He's been there before. He's pitched in big games. He has that experience. Sam Dyson, of course, gave up that home run to Jose Bautista where we had the greatest bat flip of all time, but he's having a nice year out in San Francisco and has shown in the past he can be a solid reliever. So they definitely addressed the bullpen a little bit. I would have liked to see them get a guy like Ken Giles or one of the bigger names out there. So for those reasons, I was kind of in between a C+ and a B-, but I'm not doing minuses here. So I'm going to go ahead and just give them a B. I don't think it was a bad deadline. I think it was above average for them, but I expected a little better out of them. The Tampa Bay Rays made some moves at the deadline. They made some huge moves last year that helped make their team better this year. And right now at the 2019 deadline, I think they went out and made their team even better. The Rays added Ruben Cardenas, Eric Sogard, Nick Anderson, Trevor Richards, Jesus Aguilar, and Nico Holsizer. Eric Sogard's going to be their super utility guy. Can play second base, third base, shortstop, anywhere in the outfield, wherever you need him, he's your guy. Nick Anderson's actually a really nice looking reliever that they got from the Marlins. He's got some really nice stuff, having seen him pitch against the Mets this year. Trevor Richards, starting pitcher, so that helps out with the rotation depth. Jesus Aguilar, first base power bat that they were needed. He struggled this year, but in July he's been really hot. So if if you can get the bat that you saw last year with the Brewers for the second half of this season, I think the Rays will be very happy. So I'm going to give the Rays a B+. The team that finished probably in second place this trade deadline is going to be the Cleveland Indians. I talked about the teams at the top of the American League and said that the Yankees dropped down a few. The Cleveland Indians definitely moved up. They made some really good moves. So in a trade with the Rays, they brought in Hunter Wood and Christian Arroyo. They added Victor Nova in the Bauer trade. They added Logan Allen, who's a top 100 prospect in baseball, number 98, and number 3 in the Cleveland Indians system. They also got Scott Moss, who's number 17 in the Indian system. And they added 2 major power bats in the outfield in Franmil Reyes and Yasiel Puig. Yasiel Puig, who obviously is a very good player, hits for power, hits for decent average. He's a little crazy in the head, but he's been playing really good baseball of late. And Franmil Reyes is just a home run hitting machine. Big power bat that they can add to that middle of the lineup. Right now, that Indians lineup 1 to 9 has just gotten a lot deeper by adding these 2 bats, and I really like the moves they made. They get an A from me. The Toronto Blue Jays had a very disappointing trade deadline. They moved Marcus Stroman, they moved Aaron Sanchez, Joe Biagini, but they didn't get a lot back for some of these guys. In the Stroman deal, they got Anthony Kay and Simeon Woods Richardson. They added Kyle Johnson, who's number 30 in their system, and they also got a player to be named later, Thomas Hash and Derek Fisher. Not really a great haul back for what they gave up. The Stroman deal was probably the best one they got, but we've been hearing that they could have gotten more at earlier points in the season. It just seems like the Blue Jays didn't get enough back, and they kept on to Ken Giles. I thought they were going to move him, get some more prospects back. Very confused by all the deals. I expected the Blue Jays to do better. I was a bit disappointed. D+. My team, the New York Mets, they made 2 moves. They traded Jason Vargas away and got Austin Bossart, who's a very weak hitting catcher. And then they went out and got Marcus Stroman. Go figure. No one really saw that one coming, not even myself. Now, they did give up some prospects in their system that's already pretty weak, but they got a pretty solid pitcher in Marcus Stroman back. And the way I look at it is that they basically upgraded Jason Vargas and made him into Marcus Stroman now. Now, the rotation hasn't been a problem for them this year. It's been the bullpen, which they didn't address in the trade deadline, and for a team that's claiming they want to try and win now and make a push for the playoffs, you would think they would at least get one arm in the bullpen to help. I like the Stroman addition, but I wanted to see a little bit more from the bullpen if we're really going to make a push. Therefore, I'm giving them a C+. Pirates didn't make a lot of moves at the deadline. They held on to Felipe Vasquez, who was the big name that they were rumored to move. And in their trades back, they got Cody Ponce and a player to be named later. Not really much to talk about here. C. The Milwaukee Brewers every single year need starting pitching, and it just feels like they never go out and get that guy. And again in 2019, it's just very lackluster deadline. Jordan Lyles, Jacob Faria, Drew Pomeranz, and Ray Black. Jordan Lyles, I mean, is that your answer in the starting rotation? No. Jake Faria hasn't really been a starter in 2019. Rough season in 2018, decent in 2017. Don't know if he's the guy either. You take a flyer on him, I guess, because you traded Jesus Aguilar. Pomeranz isn't having a good year. Ray Black's not having a good year. You had to go out there and get one of the top of the line starters, and you didn't. That's what you need, starting pitching. I'm not happy with what the Brewers did. Doesn't make them a worse team. I don't think it really hurts them, but didn't get a lot better. C. Texas Rangers, were they going to be buyers or sellers? They were kind of sellers-ish. They traded away Chris Martin, and they got Colby Allard back from the Braves, who's number 16 in their system. And then they also acquired Nate Jones, but that was really for international pool money because Nate Jones ain't pitching this year. Overall for the Rangers, C+. I thought they should have been sellers, get rid of guys like Mike Minor and anyone they really could have that was, available. And they didn't, so lackluster, C+. Colby Allard's a nice pickup. The White Sox, like I said, traded Nate Jones, and they got 2 prospects back for him, Ray Castro and Joseph Jarneski. I give them a D+ rating because they didn't really give up a lot and got something back, but I expected them to move a lot of pieces that they're not going to use in the future. I would have liked to see them move Alex Colomé. They didn't move either of those guys, maybe a catcher. I wasn't crazy about their deadline, so yeah, D+. The Atlanta Braves went out and made some moves. Chris Martin, John Ryan Murphy, Shane Green, and Mark Melancon. I really like what the Atlanta Braves did this deadline. They addressed the bullpen, which had been a big issue for them. They got their closer in Shane Green. They got their setup man in Mark Melancon, and they got a 7th inning guy or even another setup man in Chris Martin. The Braves needed to address their bullpen. They went out and did that. I really like the moves they made, so they get an A for me. The Reds made a lot of noise as well at the deadline, making the huge Trevor Bauer trade. So they brought Trevor Bauer in, and they also traded out Tanner Roark, who brought in Jamison Hanna, and they got a player to be named later. I like Trevor Bauer being added to this rotation a ton. You now have a really solid 1-2-3 punch. Yes, I forgot Luis Castillo yesterday, I'm aware, but I won't forget him today. Castillo, Bauer, Gray, that's a really good 1-2-3 out in the National League. I like the moves. I personally really like what the Reds did here. They weren't going to use Yasiel Puig. They weren't going to re-sign Roark. They got rid of them, and they got some value back. You can't be upset about that, so they get a B+. The Detroit Tigers, we knew were going to be sellers. They had some really good pieces. They had Shane Green, Nick Castellanos, Matt Boyd. They didn't end up moving Boyd, but they did move Castellanos and Green. For Shane Green, they only got back Joey Wentz and Travis Demeritte, which I thought was very underwhelming. Joey Wentz is number 10 in their system, so that's nice left-handed starting pitcher. Demeritte's unranked, though. I'm a little perplexed at how they didn't get more for Shane Green, who's just been so dominant, and he's not a rental. You have control over him for another year. I felt like they should have got more for him. And for Nick Castellanos, they got Paul Richan and Alex Lang. Richan's number 19 in their system, Lang's 29. For Castellanos, who's definitely going to walk at the end of the year, he was a free agent. You got probably more in return back than you really did for Shane Green. Tigers definitely disappointing at the trade deadline. I think I'm going to go ahead and give them a C. The Arizona Diamondbacks made a lot of moves at the deadline, a lot of noise for a team that's kind of buyer-seller mode both. They traded away Jazz Chisholm, but they got a pretty good amount of players back and acquired a new one. In the Greinke trade, they got Seth Beer, JB Bukowskis, Corbin Martin, and Josh Rojas. Beer is number 100 in the MLB Top 100. Bukowskis is 12 in the Diamondbacks, Martin's 13, 2 starting pitchers. They also got Zack Gallen from the Miami Marlins in exchange for Jazz Chisholm. While Jazz in theory could have been a part of their future rebuild, maybe they didn't like what they saw, and they got a really nice young pitcher in Zack Gallen, who's already produced at the major league level, slots in at number 5 in their organization in the prospects. And then they also traded for Mike Leake, who's a nice veteran starter to have down the line. He replaces Zack Greinke. I understand they're not the same type of pitcher, but in a team that's still technically in the hunt for the playoff spot, they didn't completely sell and say, we're not worried about this year. So for those reasons, I went and gave them a B+. I really liked what they did this deadline. The Washington Nationals, a team that started off slow, then they got hot. They're right in the midst of a playoff race right now, wild card National League East. Pretty good lineup, really good starting pitching. What was their problem? It was bullpen, and they went out and addressed it by getting 3 legitimate relievers: Daniel Hudson, Roenis Elias, and Hunter Strickland. I like the Elias pickup. It adds another left-handed arm to their bullpen. They definitely need a lot of help out there. One of the worst bullpen ERAs in the league. Daniel Hudson's been really solid for the Blue Jays this year. And then their sneaky pickup was in Hunter Strickland, who can essentially be their setup man. He struggled a little bit in Seattle this year, but in previous years, he's been a really good reliever. He throws absolute heat. He's got great stuff. So for the Nationals, they needed bullpen. They went out and dressed it, got 3 legitimate arms. I'm going to give them a B+ rating. The Mariners were big-time sellers, so they brought in a lot of prospects this year. Jose Caballero, Elvis Alvarado, Aaron Fletcher, and Taylor Gilbo. Gilbo's number 22 in their system. Fletcher's 27. As sellers, they got 2 guys into their farm system. There wasn't really a lot of juice around the Mariners this year anyway, because a lot of their players just straight up haven't been playing well. So I'm not going to give them a great grade, but I'm not going to destroy them. I gave them a C+. The Rockies have been a bad team this year. There's just no way around it. Extremely disappointing. You thought maybe they would at least be somewhat sellers at the deadline, get something back, or maybe they're going to be buyers. They kind of did neither. They traded a minor leaguer for Joe Harvey. Nothing really there. The St. Louis Cardinals competing for that National League Central spot. They're in first place right now. The team's not perfect. They could use some starting pitching help. The bullpen's actually been great, and they've had a solid lineup starting to heat up finally. They pretty much made no moves. They got Tony Cingrani, who's not going to pitch this year, and they got Jeffrey Abreu, who's a prospect. I thought the Cardinals could have done more. I think they could have gotten some more arms. I was definitely disappointed in what they did. They just stayed put. F for me. And then the final team to talk about here made a really minor move. It was the Los Angeles Angels. They grabbed Max Stassi from the Astros. Backup catcher, pretty much is what it is. I gave them a C rating. There's not a lot to talk about here. They didn't get better. They didn't get worse. So C, average moves. So those are my grades for every team that made trades at the MLB deadline in 2019. I would love to know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Give me your grades as well down there. Remember, leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it. That's the best way to support the channel, as well as subscribing. If you are new and you enjoy baseball content, what are you doing? Click that sub button, join the team. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DraftNeckMark. Links in the description. I'm going to be posting all this stuff from Pittsburgh this weekend. Going to all the Mets-Pirates games. It should be a really awesome time. And that's going to wrap up today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel recently. I do appreciate it. YouTube recommends you watch this video right here, as well as this is my most recent upload. So click through those if you have not yet seen them. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.